Hey everyone, how are we doing? Welcome back to the channel. I know it's been a minute since I've made a review, but I knew I had to get on here and talk about a very, very hotly anticipated film, especially during this current awards season, and that is Nickel Boys, directed by Ramel Ross, starring Ethan Heresy, Brandon Wilson, Hamish Linklater, Fred Heckinger, Daveed Diggs, and Aunjanue Ellis-Taylor, and this follows two boys named Elwood and Turner who go to this reform school, Nickel Academy, in 1960s Florida, and it follows the trials and tribulations they face there and also the aftermath of those events all of those years later. And this, of course, was adapted from the Pulitzer Prize-winning novel written by Colson Whitehead, The Nickel Boys. And this is one of the few times that I can actually say this, because I was told that reading the book was going to give a lot more context to the events in the film and a lot of the characters, and so I took it upon myself to buy the book and actually read it for once, because I don't read that many books. Maybe I should start, because I think that novel is absolutely exceptional, such a great piece of American literature, and yeah, definitely I think what is going to be considered a seminal novel in the years to come, especially when it comes to breaking down racial relations in America, especially at this time, but also in this very, very specific place that's based on an actual school called, I think, Dozier Academy, where there were a lot of bodies found from students throughout the years in unmarked graves. And this isn't really a spoiler, because, I mean, this is like in the first chapter of the book. And yeah, so it's obviously very, very weighty material, and I was wondering how they were going to handle this, because I kept hearing that it was all done in POV, and I thought that was such a fascinating choice to make a movie from that perspective. And I think what really is so great about that is the cinematography from Joe Mofrey, which really captures some of the most eloquent and beautifully crafted shots from any movie last year, especially within the first 30 minutes. I was absolutely stunned by this film. Like, it really, really just caught me by storm. And this is a funny story, because I was trying to cram in finishing the book before I went into the movie. And I ended right before the epilogue, and so I thought, okay, maybe like there's going to be like a bit of a surprise and emotional gut punch, you could say. And that was probably the best decision I could have made, because my goodness, that really, really caught me off guard. But also, looking at what they did with this film, I mean, to bring it back to the cinematography for a second, I think there isn't any movie that looks like this. And it's hard to think of a movie that ever will look like this. I mean, maybe there's going to be more films that kind of are influenced by Nickel Boys and kind of like take that POV perspective and utilize it in their own way. But I really do think it causes for some of the most stunning shots of the year, some of the best rack focuses I've seen. There's so much to admire about the composition, though I do say that that's kind of where some of my issues with the film begin to start, because having it all done in POV, I think there is a little bit of an inconsistency in how they shoot it, especially when you're back at Nickel in the 60s. I feel like, and I could be wrong about this, but from my recollection, there were a few shots that were done from behind the head, which is something they do in the future with Elwood's character to kind of signify that, you know, this is a different time and place, played by Daveed Diggs. And I really liked how they utilized that portion of the film and how they utilized POV there. But I do feel like there were times where it was a bit inconsistent in regards to actually sticking to that POV and cutting between Turner and Elwood. So that was a bit of an issue for me, considering how much it's been hyped up. But also, Ramel Ross is a very experimental filmmaker, and by no means is that a bad thing. I just think some of the experimentation that he does in this film doesn't entirely work for me, and I really do think that sometimes it comes off as a bit pretentious and unnecessary. Like, there were a couple moments where I actually laughed, because, well, one in particular, but I thought it was really dumb, And look, not to, say that what he's doing with that isn't supposed to have some sort of, profound meaning to it, but it does come off as a little artsy-fartsy for my taste. And that's no disrespect to Ramel Ross, because otherwise what is crafted here is a truly, truly beautiful movie. I mean, there's no denying the inherent power in this story and how it is represented on screen. This is a great adaptation of the Colson Whitehead novel, even though I think it does pale in a bit of a comparison to the book, because as I said earlier, I think this book is such a monumental feat in American literature. There's going to be a lot more present there that is not showing up on the final, cutting room floor for this film. And that's fine. There's some stuff, even when I was reading the book, there was one section where I was like, there's no way they can adapt this in the movie. And they didn't. I'm not upset about that. But I do think that there were some very noticeable storytelling opportunities that were kind of missed by, changing things around in certain ways. But there are also a couple of really, really great choices that I think help strengthen the narrative of the film in a way that it doesn't in the book. But then I went back and read the epilogue to the book after seeing the movie, and while I think that there's a couple things in the film that gives the epilogue a little bit more power and merit there, I do think the epilogue in the book is way better. And that's kind of like my thing, and maybe this is why I shouldn't read books before I see movies, right? Because I want to go in and judge it as, objectively as a film as possible, but when stuff like that happens, it really does distract me. But there are also so many sequences in the movie where I was almost telegraphing what they were going to say, because there's like lines that are verbatim from the book and placed in the film and utilized to perfection, I think. And so this is probably, a very interesting review, because I've never come at a movie from this angle, but I do think there were some missed opportunities in the storytelling. But let's talk about the cast for a sec, because I really like the performances from everyone in this movie. Ethan Hersey and Brandon Wilson are very, very good together, and I really love the friendship that blossoms between Turner and Elwood, because that really is the heart of this whole story, and what these two boys have to endure together and alone, I think really strengthen this film. Hamish Linklater is chilling in this movie whenever he's on screen as Mr. Spencer. I mean, yeah, every time you see him, there's going to be trouble around the corner. I thought he was really great. And there are a few more standouts. I did like Fred Heckinger in this movie, even though that's probably because his role was a bit downplayed. And I do like what they do with his character in the movie more than I like what they did with him in the book. So that was a big plus for me. But obviously, you've been hearing about her for months on end, ever since it was premiered at Telluride, and that's Aunjanue Ellis-Taylor as Harriet Elwood's grandmother in this, and she is absolutely tremendous. I mean, between this and Exhibiting Forgiveness, which I almost saw a year ago at Sundance, she really gave two of the best supporting performances of the entire year. And it's such a small role in the long scheme of the film, but it's so impactful. Like, every scene she has is just so wrought with this, sadness and just underlying emotion that really makes her stand out in a way that really anchors the heart of this film outside of the relationship between these two boys. And I just think she's absolutely tremendous. I don't know if I would vote her into my Oscar 5, but I do think she's deserving of a nomination, especially if we're looking at a collective body of work from an actor in a single year. I think Aunjanue Ellis-Taylor is like right at the top of that list. And so I think she really is the best part of this movie. And of course, everything else with the filmmaking and so on and so forth. But despite the reservations I had for this film, I still think that this was just such an exquisitely made, beautifully and hauntingly powerful story about this tragic period in American history and this, very tragic place that ruined the lives of so many young boys, that it's kind of hard to think that something like this occurred. But to be honest, I'm not entirely surprised. And I really do love how sensitive the approach to this material is sort of similar to Zone of Interest in a sense, where you don't really see a whole lot of what happens, and I think there are some really great experimental cuts in that regard, especially one sequence that really just left me stunned. And I think the ending of this film is just absolutely tremendous. Like I said, my jaw was like on the floor once I realized what was going on in the story and how they do the ending. It is just absolutely a beautifully powerful movie that I think is an essential watch for any fans of cinema and also any fans of the book, because it might not satisfy you 100% to the degree that maybe you'd like it to if you're an avid fan of the book, but I know it has pleased many fans regardless. And I really do think that this is one, while not one of my favorite movies of the year, it's definitely one of the best pieces of cinema that you're going to see, and I'm going to give Nickel Boys an 8.5 out of 10. I really did end up loving this film. It's one that I think about it from time to time, especially after I saw it, and it just gets definitely gets strengthened in some ways, even though I think it does have its fair share of shortcomings. Now, when it comes to the Oscar nominations that are coming up this Thursday, do I think Nickel Boys is going to get nominated? Well, if you did see the prediction video I did with all the good folks, I do think right now Nickel Boys could land in that 10th place spot for Best Picture. I don't know if it's going to happen. Honestly, this has been such an unpredictable Oscar year, but I do think it is absolutely getting Best Adapted Screenplay, and I think it honestly should. And I think on its best day it could be like Women Talking or something, where it gets like 2 nominations for picture and screenplay and that's it. But I do think it is worthy of praise. If Ramel Ross misses Best Director, I'm not going to be upset, and I certainly would be okay to see him get nominated. Same thing with Jomo Frey. You know, the inconsistencies keep it a little bit below my top 5 for cinematography, but I really do think that this is such a, transgressive and just very original vision and piece of cinema, the likes of which we've never seen. So if he does get that nomination, it would be well deserved. And yeah, those are my thoughts on Nickel Boys. But let me know if you saw Nickel Boys down in the comments below. Have you read the book? Do you think this adaptation holds a candle to that novel? And what did you think if you haven't seen the book? Did you love this movie? Were you a little bit well, maybe lukewarm? I don't know. It's been splitting a lot of people in regards to how they tell the story, but I really would love to hear what you guys think and so much more. And please smash the like button, subscribe to the channel. There's going to be more movie reviews like this very soon, and I hope you check them out. But there's just so much coming around the corner. The Oscar nominations, I'm going to be talking about those, and yeah, a lot in store for you guys, and then some. And yeah, I'll talk to you guys in the next video.